Hey, what's up YouTube? SkyBadger here, and we are back on day 41 of our 100 player fan game series. So, we're in a little bit of naval combat at the moment, and that's what you're going to see for the first half of this video. For the second half of the video, we're going to focus on naval combat elsewhere, but for the time being, this battle is just going to be the focus. So, at the moment, what we're seeing is myself and my ally are fighting the British Columbian Navy. My ally was in port with a sub-screen out, and British Columbia thought it would be a good time to sink my ally's navy. Little did he know that I was also in the region. So, as we can see, British Columbia has sent in a large group of subs to attack my ally's main fleet. However, what he didn't anticipate is my ally has a sub wall out blocking the entry to the port. Now, those 15 subs are protecting the main fleet. However, if those 15 subs fall, what we're going to then see is those subs, the British Columbian subs, will attack our enemy fleet directly and deal a lot of damage. So we've split our fleet into two groups to assist our ally. We have a group of destroyers, which you can see in the upper part of the screen, targeting that sub wall. You can see that they're currently running at the moment. What they're doing is they're moving in and out of combat to avoid enemy fire from the battleships. They move into range briefly while our enemy's reloading, fire on the submarines, and then move out. We've also got another group to the left of the screen that's coming in from the side. Now, these ships here are moving to cut off British Columbia, and if they can do so successfully, we'll be able to destroy his fleet here. We've also got some aircraft operating from the carrier, interceptors and naval bombers, and they just basically give us a full picture of what's happening. These allow us to see subs, which British Columbia cannot do. We've got one more group out there as well, right underneath the BC battleships. We've also got our own submarines. And what they're doing at the moment is we're using a little trick called the hold fire trick. And we use that to slip them past enemy troops. So if you've got high command, what you can do with your submarines is you can put them on hold fire. And as long as your enemy cannot see your submarines will pass through any opposition threat. And what we've done is we've used this to literally slip our subs past his main stack of subs, his stack of destroyers, his stack of 10 additional subs, his cruisers, and we've slipped them all the way back there to, as you're seeing now, attack his battleships. So what we're going to do with this strategy is we're going to attack the BC battleships, and then we're just going to hold fire when it looks like he's onto us and get out of there. So as we can see, BC is moving his destroyers back now 4 minutes away to get in range of our subs. So it's time to move them on, and we'll do that shortly. As you can see, we're moving our naval bombers about, and this is so they do not complete a patrol. As you can see, they're patrolling at the moment, and as many of you will know, a patrol timer is 15 minutes. Every 15 minutes, if we don't reset that, our naval bombers will attack the enemy units, and at the moment against this fleet, they're heavily outclassed, and we do not want that. They'll get shredded. So every 15 minutes, we need to be sure to adjust. There you go. You saw me move my subs back out of range. The BC subs are there as well, and they're trying to catch my subs. Now, the hold fire trick does not work if you get attacked. If your enemy attacks you, what will happen then is you will engage in combat, and you cannot hold fire out of that. So as long as you're not attacked directly, and your enemy's not attacking you, it works fine. So the enemy battleships, they're not attacking me, they're attacking my ally's surface fleet, which allows us to slip in and out of combat, and that's what we're doing right now. So now we're just going to take a second to focus on what our ally is doing, because this will be very similar to what we will do when we engage the BC fleet when our main surface fleet gets in range. So at the moment, our ally, who's in port, he has split off into a few groups. He's got his submarine wall, he's got his main surface fleet, which has his battleships and cruisers, and he's also got his destroyers. Now, all of these units are very good or very horrible at certain things. His submarines are acting as a wall at the moment to stop enemy submarines from attacking directly. And the reason for that is submarines are very poor at attacking other submarines. So that's what he's using his submarines for at the moment, block enemy submarines. His destroyers, which are in a separate stack to the battleships, are targeting only British Columbian submarines, and they're attacking that group of 24, which is attacking his group of 12. And the reason for that is, as many of us will know, destroyers are the counter to submarines. Destroyers target submarines, and they will shred them if you use them correctly. And you can see that my own destroyers are up there helping out with that. And then on top of that, he's also got his surface fleet, his battleships, and cruisers. Now, you might think these would be attacking the submarines to dwindle it down quicker, but in reality, cruisers and battleships are very poor against subs. So what he's doing at the moment is he'll be using his battleships to attack the enemy surface fleet. Even though he's trapped in port, there's no point wasting those shots on submarines when he can do high damage to the enemy cruisers and battleships. So that's what he is doing there. So there's basically a paper, scissors, rock effect going on here. The submarines will beat our allied surface fleet. They will shred the destroyers, and they will shred the cruisers and battleships if ally lets them get to him. So subs beat surface units, okay? They beat your battleships, your cruisers, your destroyers. Submarines, they're actually a good counter to submarines in their own respect, but that's the story for another day, or if you're paying attention to what we said earlier. Destroyers, they beat subs, okay? And then they are beaten by your surface, your other surface units, your battleships and cruisers, and your battleships and cruisers are great against convoys. They're great against destroyers, other battleships, and other cruisers, but they're horrible against subs. So subs beat cruisers and battleships, destroyers beat submarines, and battleships and cruisers beat destroyers. If you can remember that, you can pretty much win any combat with that alone. And as we can see here, the reason we're winning this combat is because we've got the mix right. Our ally is defending his main fleet with subs, so BC is engaged in a sub-on-sub battle, which is going to drag out for literally days if you let it. And at the same time, he's using his battleships to fight enemy battleships. We're using our destroyers to fight BC's submarines, and we're using my own submarines to fight BC's battleships. So we're pretty much winning every single, game of paper, scissors, rock here that we can. Additionally, to help us do this, we have something that our enemy doesn't, and this is why carriers are so important. Those naval bombers are not there to attack. They are there purely to scout, and this allows us to see the full combination. We know exactly what our enemy has and what they're going to play in that combination. So we can immediately see when he's going to throw subs at us, and we know how to counter them. He does not have that. So he cannot see where our subs are, so he cannot deploy his destroyers to defend against it. As we can see here, he's finally caught onto our trick and he's attacked our submarines. We got in 3 good rounds of combat against the battleships, but we're still actually in range. So instead of attacking his submarines with our subs, because like I said earlier, subs are horrible against subs, which makes them great for stopping subs, we're going to then focus our subs on his battleships, where we can do maximum damage and keep his battleships pinned. So as you can see right now, our main surface fleet has moved into range, and this is a little bit later on in the day, so I'm on mobile now. And we can see that our cruisers and battleships are opening fire separately, okay? So I've split them into 2 groups. Carriers and cruisers, because they have speed, and they're a little bit faster than our battleships, and they've moved in, they've already opened fire, and what they're going to do is they're going to get their asses out of there before our enemy can return fire. Our battleships are now moving in, and they'll be getting ready to take their shot. Now, the reason for splitting them up is speed. If I had to stick them together, it would mean that the battleships would have to move further to get the cruisers into range, because cruisers have a lesser range. So splitting them up allows them to work separately. Now, there is a downside to this. If my enemy is to counterattack and return fire at my cruisers are going to take a lot of damage, because all that focused fire from the battleships is spread over one class of unit. In reality though, we want that fire focused across multiple different ships. So this is why you need to be careful when spreading them out. If our ships are in a group, we have our 3 carriers, 3 battleships, and 5 cruisers, and hell, even the 9 destroyers. If they do return fire, that damage from that one battleship we see there will be spread over all of our ships, meaning less damage to each individual unit type, and it will mean we'll preserve more of our firepower. So instead of, in this example here, the cruisers are very likely to take the hit. Instead of losing the cruiser, we take maybe 5% damage to all our different types, and our cruisers would still have a pretty high level of firepower. So the aim of the game is to get damage across multiple units and lower your efficiency by a little bit instead of losing a whole unit. It's very hard to get new ships out into the middle of the ocean like this, so we want to try and make the most out of the ships we have and make sure they don't die. So One thing you probably would have noticed is BC ships were higher tech than ours, meaning he can run away. His ships are faster and they have slightly better range. So because of this, we're not going to chase. We can't literally chase. We could chase with our cruisers, however, that would be a horrible idea. We'd keep up with his battleships, but his own cruisers would absolutely destroy us. So this is kind of where this combat ends. As we can see, we've dwindled down that sub wall, the BC subs to 7, and we'll have those finished off pretty soon, and his surface fleet will be able to move. As we anticipated, our allies' subs had died, and he is attacking the main fleet directly. So elsewhere in the world, as you're seeing now, we're engaged in other battles as well. The New Zealand and Venezuelan fleet have tried to push into the Red Sea. I'm pretty sure that's the Red Sea. Gulf of Aden then. And what we're doing at the moment is we're tar pitting them with subs. A tar pit is a classic maneuver where we send our subs in to engage, fight in combat to slow them down and trap our enemy in a battle. Once stationary, we can send in artillery and fire rockets and hit them and deal more damage. We would usually deal with this sort of thing via conventional means. However, our allies' surface fleet, Foro, has been severely injured fighting New Zealand previously, and he's dealing with things happening in his own core. So that's not going to work. We have to think outside the box here and deal with it with other means. So tar pit with subs, as you can see, we have a lovely stack of 59 troops waiting, and they're going to move in soon and open fire with artillery. Elsewhere in the world, we're retreating from India, and as we retreat, we're not just going to give up land easily. We're launching counterattacks with rockets, artillery, and our air force as we retreat. In Europe, we're also finishing off those Finnish units that were annoying us the other day. We finally got our air force up there to deal with them, and we've also got a little bit of artillery in there as well. However, our artillery is crippled, so it's going to take some time to deal with it. We could send our other units in, our light tanks, however, I really don't want to damage those. But we have to deal with those troops somehow and get them out, and then we can focus our efforts elsewhere. As we can see, we're now back down there, and we can see where those first few rockets are arriving. 4 rockets on the enemy fleet in 17 seconds. We can also see where our allies' surface, land artillery has opened up fire. We can see that our allies' subs have been dwindled down to 4, so we really need to get through this quick before the New Zealand fleet shows up and deals more damage, okay? At the moment, I believe that's the Venezuelan fleet we've got in there, and those rockets are about to hit. 4 rockets. Yep, we sunk a couple of destroyers, a cruiser, and a battleship. Pretty good trade, actually, and if you look in the area, I mean, we've got other rockets there as well ready to fire. As we can see, we're watching those rockets drop down on that stack of 26. So this is 7 rockets versus a stack of 26. We're hoping more or less to really cripple the stack here and make him hold it back and send it back. Rog also has his air force out, targeting weak links that are trying to approach the Middle East. Now, it'll be interesting to see what happens here with this group of rockets. With a group of 7 like this, they each do 30 damage. So against infantry, I'd be expecting to see about 14 to 20 units die, okay? Maybe around 16, play it safe. However, most infantry units either have between 10 and 15 hit points. So you average that out over a stack like that, we're probably going to see around 16 to 14 units die. Anyway, let's see what happens. There we go, hits, give it a second to tick over. So actually that was a pretty anticlimactic one. Potentially, the commandos absorbed some of that fire. Back over in the ocean, we can see that we fired a stack of 7 rockets this time. Hopefully that'll have a little bit more effect and dwindle the stack down even more. Once again, New Zealand is slowly pushing into India. Most of that land we're not trying to defend though, except from the odd counterattack. We're retreating mostly in that theatre. However, as you can see, we do have a lot of rockets in the area. They're lined up, waiting for a very juicy target to appear. How far out's that? Pretty far out. Let's go see what's happening up in Europe. Up in Europe, we can see that, oh, I haven't done too much by the looks of it. And it looks like I was briefly trying to have a look at that combat, but you know, we talked about that earlier on, so let's just leave that. We're producing a hell of a lot of rockets, as you can see, and we have a lot of cruisers under production. Here we go, here's those 7 rockets coming in that we were talking about earlier. 45 seconds. Those artillery pieces are still firing, they're still dealing a lot of damage. Ooh, another 1 rocket coming in, hopefully we'll get to see that hit later. So overall, this isn't the best way to deal with this sort of incursion, but considering the units we have available, it's the only way. We don't have the ports to produce a navy to counter this quick enough, and all of our ports are exposed to our enemy and they could blockade them, so rockets and subs are the best way to go about it. They haven't brought any naval bombers with them, so they can't see our subs unless we attack them, and that gives us a massive advantage. So 7 rockets, they each do 32 ships at this level. Against the stack we're seeing here, 4 or 5 ships would be expected to be sunk. So let's have a look at that. We've got 3, 3, 3. After the rockets hit, 2, 2, 2. That's not surprising. A battleship will take 75 hit points, a cruiser 50, and the destroyer will they're about a 30. So we're looking about at 155 hit points there, and that is quite a lot. Considering each rocket only does 30 from a stack of 7, we were only expecting 210 damage, so reasonably expectable. Over in West Africa, you can see that we're fighting against East Amazonas and the other players that are, well, and Venezuela, that are trying to invade us in West Africa in our allies' core territory. Now, he's made a fatal error of stopping for a second, and we can see that I've lined up rockets to fire on that stationary unit and dwindle it down a bit more. We've also got artillery moving in. Now, our artillery does outrange him, so we do have that going for us. As we can see as well, it appears as though East Amazonas is trying to move in more troops. So we're sending our aircraft now to scout it out. We probably won't attack though, because he does have escorts, and our air force is pretty important to us. So we'll wait for them to come onto land and kill them there. Most of the troops that he's moving onto land are aircraft, and we can kill those very easily because he doesn't have a runway. So we can wait for them to get onto land, then our aircraft can destroy them without the cover of his escorts. As we can see, we're also sending a lot of rockets in, and that's because we need a lot of rockets to kill large stakes of 84 troops. Got another rocket coming in 4 minutes away, and the artillery's still firing away. Arguably, the artillery is only a small part of this. However, when you have a lot of artillery, it can actually be really effective against ships, especially SP-RT. That can really do some damage. Roger's Air Force is still working hard on those East Amazonas troops, and he appears to have done a lot of damage. So this is where the action really ends. Okay, this is not where the action ends for day 41, but this is also where my recordings for day 41 stop. Now, with this combat here, we were very successful in destroying that fleet, and we did take quite a few casualties and lost a few subs and wasted quite a few rockets doing it. However, it was worth it because it gave us control of that part of the sea for a few more days and allowed us to move troops across. It did also discourage them from sending more troops into that area of the ocean. So, thank you for watching, and I guess I'll see you in the next episode.